This filing window is a very big deal. It's a historic opportunity. It's probably the last opportunity to get a radio station. These licenses are going to be full-powered radio stations. They're not low-powered radio stations. I'm from Iowa myself, and I know that the progressives in my hometown, their media is yard signs. That's how they're trying to get their message out. It's not working. A commercial station decides to enlarge its frequency. They can take the airwaves away again from a low-powered station, and that's been happening in Spokane of conservative religious stations who have an ambition to have large amounts of radio stations. And they have been tying everybody else up in court, preventing them from being able to build the stations that they have gotten licenses for. They've also stolen licenses. There's been a pretty shocking grab for these licenses in the last 20 years.
Struggle and love, we need to tell everyone there is more than enough. Talk about working folks, war and peace, hungry for honesty, hope and release, trying to stay alive until I die. I don't ask for guarantees, but I need high fidelity.
Welcome to the Battle for Progressive Media. I'm today's host, John Riley, also a producer with the Out FM Collective, WBAI Radio's progressive lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender news, culture, and activist hour. This program is in no way connected with WBAI or the Pacifica Radio Network. On today's show, we'll take another look at the progressive non-commercial Pacifica Radio Network. Pacifica was founded in 1949 by anti-war activist Lou Hill, who saw how the drumbeat for war was transmitted by the corporate media. Hill also worked for a time as a producer for a commercial radio station and saw firsthand the kinds of pressures that limit the news we get. Today, we'll be looking at the expanding influence of the Pacifica Radio Network and the critical window that the progressive community has over the next few months to put in applications to the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC for short, to license full-power non-commercial radio stations in many regions of the United States. Applications for licenses of any kind have been frozen for 6 years since the last opening, which was for low-power FM stations. It may well be the last opening. Unfortunately, because the low-power FM stations broadcast with such little strength, their signal doesn't go so very far. So while that development was important, this new development has more potential to project local community voices. It also has the potential to bring more Christian right broadcasters to the airwaves. Because they want to build their media networks, which currently number in excess of 600 stations. The question progressives have to ask and answer is, will they rise to the occasion and take advantage of this historic opportunity? Radio, while an older technology, still reaches 95% of the U.S. population. Will progressives in small cities take advantage of an opportunity which may not come again in their lifetime? Some are, but there are many areas which lack organizers. In the next 28 minutes, we'll be examining the basics of this issue and give information on how you can make a difference. The Pacifica Radio Network is playing an important support role for local communities wishing to build community radio stations. While playing a support role, Pacifica itself is not applying for any licenses because the rules that call for local communities to apply for themselves would prohibit Pacifica from doing so. Ursula Rudenberg, a media activist, heads up the Pacifica Foundation's support effort.
I'm Ursula Rudenberg. I'm the Pacifica Affiliates Coordinator. I work for the national office. The affiliates program that I'm coordinating right now started in 2002 after the Pacifica settlement. At the time, Pacifica in the late 90s had, I think, around 70, 60, 70, 80 affiliates, but the whole affiliate program collapsed. And by 2002, when we got the, after the settlement and we started to rebuild the network, there were 13 affiliates left. And So I began to work at the affiliates program, and I officially became the affiliates coordinator in 2003, I think. And at the time, we had 34 affiliates. Today, this is April 2007, and we have 116 affiliates. I'm not sure. It's 115, 116. And the latest affiliate we just acquired 2 days ago is at Vassar College in Poughkeepsie, New York. Also, recent, really interesting affiliates was a radio station in Selma, Alabama, which belongs to the Martin Luther King's former lawyer in Selma. And a radio station in Nigeria that has a listening area of 24 million.
Pacifica is unique in its flexibility regarding payment for its programs because it is driven by its social justice mission. Ursula Rudenberg explains.
Affiliates pay on a sliding scale. The fee is based on their station budget. There is no real formula in radio for how to charge, and so this is the method we've come up with. It is a different one from NPR, but we feel this is the most equitable based on what a station can pay. We don't ever refuse affiliation to any station based on money, so we always have a certain percentage of our affiliates are not paying for one reason or another. But we do have a fee scale. For low-powered stations, we charge $300 a year. And for full-powered stations, the fee scale starts at $1,400, and it goes up to $9,900. And it's a one-fee service, meaning that no matter how much you pay, you get all services of the affiliates program. People, their amount of what they get is not based on what they pay. Currently, the affiliate revenue for 2006-2007 fiscal year, I think will be about 210,000, possibly 215,000. When I started in 2003, I think the affiliate revenue was 60,000. So this is a business that has a healthy growth rate, very healthy. It's almost tripling.
Corporate media consolidation has had a tremendous impact on local communities, shutting them out of access to radio airwaves in most locales. Local radio stations, even commercial ones, used to have at least some local reporting and coverage. Increasingly, however, commercial stations have automated their programming using national feeds and playlists. Because of criticisms of this consolidation by grassroots movements of the left and of the right, there is pressure on the Federal Communications Commission, or FCC, to respond. In the coming months, new licenses will be available in many areas of the country. Ursula Rudenberg explains.
Radio for People is a project that Pacifica has taken on. About a year ago, the Pacifica National Board voted that they wanted Pacifica to be part of efforts to let people know about an opportunity to apply for non-commercial radio licenses. Getting licenses to build radio stations is really an American entitlement. Since the airwaves are really the public trust, the FCC is in charge of dispensing licenses to regulate this, and the left side of the dial is reserved for non-commercial stations. So since I think it was around 1970 when this started, people have been applying for licenses and building community radio stations. What has happened in recent history is the phenomenon of conservative religious stations who have an ambition to have large amounts of radio stations. And they have been tying everybody else up in court, preventing them from being able to build the stations that they have gotten licenses for. They've also stolen licenses. There's been a pretty shocking grab for these licenses in the last 20 years. And so the FCC put a freeze on license applications to find a more equitable way to dispense licenses that hopefully will prevent this kind of abuse in the future. So there was a freeze, and what they did is they came up with a point system which appears to give people more credibility, ability to get the stations based on various criteria. One of them is whether they're a local organization. Other criteria have to do with reaching audiences that don't have radio stations yet. There's various criteria that are really designed to make this a more genuine educational and community-based resource. And so now they've come up with their point system, and they announced that on October 12th in 2007 they will open up a filing window which will last for 8 days, 7 days, and everybody that wants a non-commercial radio license is going to have to apply during that week. And it's pretty much considered a reality by everybody involved with radio that because of the fact that there's not that many non-commercial licenses left, and also because the religious right is going to make a grab for all of them, that this is going to be the last filing window, really for this foreseeable future, if ever. So what we're looking at now is, in a way, the filling out of a large part of the community radio map in the United States. So Pacifica, as the organization that founded community radio, has a certain sense of commitment to the completion of this, you want to call it an era of community radio building. And so the Pacifica National Board voted to participate in letting people know about this opportunity and to help people apply. And so that's what we've been doing. And we've been working together with other groups involved with the project, our National Federation of Community Broadcasters, Prometheus Radio Project, Public Radio Capital, Future of Music, and Common Frequency. And then some of the rather more prominent FCC lawyers like John Krigler and Michael Cousins have also been volunteering their time to give us legal advice. And consulting engineer Michael Brown, who lives out in Portland, has been giving a lot of his time to help us on the engineering side, and he's also been doing the engineering studies for people at a very low rate because he really supports community radio. So he's trying to make it affordable for people to do this. Because it does involve some money. You have to hire lawyers to make sure your application is legal and airtight, and you have to hire an engineer to do an engineering study for you so that when you apply to the FCC, you basically have to show that you have, created a frequency map that is viable. So the coalition initially was in an outreach phase just in terms of letting people know about it. Now we've kind of moved more into a phase of making sure everybody gets through the application properly. Hopefully most of these people that we're working with will go all the way through to applying. And when that's done, if they get their frequencies, then we're going to have to help them fight off the legal battles because they will no doubt be challenged. Probably by the religious right. There's probably going to be some other challenges. So they're going to have to withstand that onslaught. And then once that's been withstood, whoever's left, and we're hoping there'll be, some people left, we're going to have to show them how to build a radio station.
Ursula Rudenberg describes Pacifica's attempt to help local communities prepare for the October 12th filing window.
These licenses are going to be full-powered radio stations. They're not low-powered radio stations. To understand that distinction, I guess you kind of have to visualize you have to visualize the air as, a raw material, a resource, and that licenses are basically claiming spaces on that air. The full-powered stations we're speaking about are the spaces to the left end of the dial that have been reserved for non-commercial, what's called non-commercial educational radio stations. These licenses can be anywhere from 100,000 watts to 200,000 watts or higher. I'm not sure if there's a cap on it. The size of the frequency is determined really by two things: how much you want to pay, how much electricity you want to pay to pump out that kind of wattage, and also how much space there is for you to do it, because you cannot invade somebody else's listening area. So in some areas you can only have a relatively small station because everything else has been taken up, and in some places you got wide open land and you can go as far as you want. Full power stations are permanent. Once you have the license, nobody else can take it, can take that space, and interestingly enough, if you can sell it and make a lot of money from it. So it's kind of an interesting thing. You get it for free from the government, but it is actually worth a lot of money once you have made the station. Those are full-powered stations. Like I said, they live on the left end of the dial. Now, low-powered is another phenomenon, and that actually came into being because there was so little space left on the left end of the dial, and also, especially in urban areas, there was no space left on the left end of the dial, that people got desperate. And low-powered was basically started by a bunch of folk in Philadelphia who were so desperate to have community radio, and there is no community radio in Philadelphia. They started a pirate station because they wanted to be on the air. Eventually, you know, a pirate station is a station that is not legally licensed by the FCC. So eventually the FCC came and shut them down. Said, you can't do that, that's illegal. And so what they were responding to was the fact that there is no space anymore for community radio in a lot of parts of the country. So they went to Congress and they lobbied and won the right to put radio stations in the kind of empty zones between commercial radio stations, because the majority of the radio dial is reserved for commercial radio. Well, commercial radios, they don't butt up against each other. There's a buffer zone between their listening areas, their frequencies. So when you flip through the dial, you're going to hit like a dead spot between, usually between one commercial station and the next. And that's like the buffer zone that is put between large stations. What these guys did, they said, look, in that buffer zone, there's room for a low-powered station as long as that station, stays within, say, a 10-mile radius of itself and only pumps out 100 watts. So give us permission to live in the cracks between the commercial radio stations. The FCC and Congress was convinced, and they gave them permission to do that. So today, people have been building these small stations on the commercial part of the dial in between the big stations. Now, they are different from full power stations in the sense that, first of all, they live in the commercial part of the dial. Second of all, they're very small. They can only reach a very, very local radius. And the third thing is that they do not have infinite claim to that space. In other words, if a commercial station decides to enlarge its frequency, they can take the airwaves away again from a low-powered station. And we've had that's been happening in Spokane. We have an affiliate that's on a low-powered station. And there is a Clear Channel radio station in Idaho. It's not even in Washington State. Has become so big and wants to be in Spokane that it now has taken away half of the radio station from the low-powered station. They've taken one side away, so now where the radio station used to be a full circle around the radio tower, now it's a half circle because Clear Channel has taken that away. So it's it's a little bit tough for low-powered stations because they go through all of the work of building a radio station and invest the community in this, and there's always the possibility that they will lose everything. The last thing I want to say about that is that the commercial broadcasting lobby and, quite frankly, NPR got threatened by the presence of low-powered stations, and they maintained that it was going to be a problem for radio. And so a freeze was put on low-powered stations. So there was really only one generation of people who were allowed to apply for low-powered, and now it has ended because Congress put a freeze on it. There was a study made that determined that the problems that NPR and commercial broadcasters saw were not real problems. And so now the low-powered community is waiting for Congress to lift the freeze. The House of Representatives has lifted the freeze, so they're waiting for the Senate to do so. If the Senate does so, then once again they will be able to build low-powered stations. A lot of people think that this filing window is low power, and because it's been so long since anybody's been allowed to apply for a full power station, but these are in fact full power stations.
Affiliates coordinator for the Pacifica Radio Network, Ursula Rudenberg, talks about what's at stake.
This filing window is a very big deal. It's a historic opportunity. It's probably the last opportunity to get a radio station. So if you know of a person that could use a community radio station, especially somebody who lives not in a large city but in a more rural or a small town or suburbs, tell them about this. It's a big deal. It's a huge opportunity. And the best way to do that is to go to our website, radioforpeople.org. That's radioforpeople.org. And you can check out the basics there. There's a checklist as to, kind of first questions you would have about something like this. What are the basic facts? What are the steps you're going to have to go through to really do this? And if you really are interested, or if you know somebody that's interested, call 510-812-7989. That's 510-812-7989. And we'll get you started. What Pacifica is doing is we're building support networks based on regional areas of the country, so that we hold regular conference calls, and they're like check-in support calls. And people are basically helping each other through this process. And, this could not be a greater bunch of people, because these people are rediscovering, the magic of starting a radio station. These are people that have a commitment to democratic media, who are doing this because they understand that this is a fight for the airwaves, because it is a fight for the airwaves. And you know what they say, when you take over a country, you take the radio stations first. It's very, very important. We're talking about areas that have no progressive media. I'm from Iowa myself, and I know that the progressives in my hometown, their media is yard signs. That's how they're trying to get their message out. It's not working. Having media that gets your message out, that allows people just to talk publicly about what's happening in a community, it transforms the community, and it changes us Americans from being stupid and gullible and being led over the cliff again and again into wars and all sorts of stupidity. It creates thinking people. So if you know of somebody who could benefit from this, tell them to contact us. We certainly can use contributions. The best thing to do to contribute right now would be to call also 510-812-7989. Eventually we're going to get our website set up to take money, but it's not happening yet. So the best thing is just to call. We certainly can use help just in terms of getting the word out. And if you're really interested in being involved, and a bigger level in terms as an organizer, let us know. The more the better, because we're dealing with a very short period of time now, and the consequences of this will be very long term. So everybody that can help with this effort is very, very much appreciated.
That was Affiliates Coordinator for the Pacifica Radio Network, Ursula Rudenberg, talking about the historic opportunity progressive forces have if they take the initiative to file for a radio license with the Federal Communications Commission. Time is short. The application window is October 12th through 19th. Engineering studies and legal work needs to be done. Call Ursula Rudenberg for assistance. Progressive forces have been growing in recent years as consciousness of the degraded environment, the injustice of the war in Iraq, and opposition to the Christian right is growing. In late June, 10,000 grassroots organizers converged on Atlanta to educate themselves and each other and to begin networking at a higher level. The event, the U.S. Social Forum, in some ways mirrored the International World Social Forum. These gatherings represent a challenge to the gatherings of the ruling elites at the World Economic Forums, where the fabulously wealthy and influential plan how to grow ever richer and more powerful at the expense of the planet and the poor and working people. The Atlanta Convergence was remarkable in that it took place in the South and was organized with the participation of many people of color, grassroots organizations, and organizers, rather than by non-governmental organizations. Many progressives are recognizing that if the U.S. is to change, the change must also occur in the South, because that's where a majority of the U.S. population lives. In coming weeks, we'll be covering aspects of the U.S. Social Forum in cooperation with Out FM, the progressive lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender show on WBAI New York 99.5 FM, broadcast on Mondays at 11. In coming weeks, we'll also be working with Health Action producer Bob Lederer, who recently interviewed revolutionary thinker and musician Fred Ho about his battle with colon cancer. Here's an excerpt of that interview.
I realize that's why we cannot cure or get rid of cancer until we cure, quote unquote, get rid of capitalism. That the two are mutually enhancing. That as long as you can sell these new powerful drugs that cost about $250,000 to take, if that is still profitable, then eliminating things like processed foods, pesticides, the industrial manufacturing of food, you know, the drowning of electromagnetic radiation that we're saturated with, the reliance upon and dependency upon the treadmill, all those things that contribute to set the conditions for the growth of cancer. Unless we deal with those sorts of things, there will not be a cure.
You wrote in another entry in your cancer journal, you wrote, quote, "I have changed my priorities significantly. These are my new priorities in life. Swimming, exercise, walking at least half an hour daily, eating for pleasure, but with nutrition as the core of that pleasure, enjoying my friends and family, and taking on projects that no one would touch, that have no mainstream appeal, interest, or support, but which need to confront and challenge and change the consciousness of people." So tell us a little now about your new life post-chemo, post-war against cancer, or I guess, as I said, it's still going on, but post kind of the intensive phase. What is your life going to look like going forward?
I'm going to say something that may be very difficult and dangerous for people to hear. Once you get diagnosed with something as severe and devastating as cancer, you have to fundamentally change your life. Not expect, like for example, White House Press Secretary Tony Snow has a reoccurrence of colon cancer, that you can just go back, particularly into that life, that meat grinder, so to speak, that you were in previously, because something about that meat grinder existence either set the conditions or enhance the conditions for you in getting cancer. So what I had to do was get off the treadmill.
Health Action was founded by Bob Lederer when he was an AIDS activist. He and Health Action Collective members bring an ACT-UP style of empowerment and commitment to every show, every Monday at 1 p.m. on listener-sponsored, non-commercial WBAI New York. This is John Riley for the Battle for Progressive Media.